love yourself enough, you would know that using your phone past 1 a.m. when you know you have to wake up at 6 o'clock is just not going to be good for your health.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Talking Terms. I'm your host, Ayotunde Adejumo Adu. And stopping by for a conversation, it's a developer and founder of Building Digital Tools and Platforms. He's also an active social media user with a strong focus on educational and informational content. That dual lens creator and mindful user gives him a clear, balanced view of how platforms can both empower and distract young people. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome with me, Favor.
Hi guys. Strong is a big one, but yeah, I'm here to shed some light on what I have researched and what I know from, I would say 4-5 years of being in the tech space.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Well, that's a long year, huh?
Yeah,
4-5 years. Wow.
I mean, I studied tech. I've been using social media for a while now, and yeah, it's around there. 2020 is already. COVID was already 5 years ago, so it's
That's true.
it's not that long anymore. But yeah,
That's true. You're really welcome.
thank you.
So going by, the topic of today, does social media help or harm young people's mental health? What do you make of this?
Like I usually debate in more casual settings. I of course think that it's a question that gets polarized too quickly between bad or good, and I think for most people in the good, they see it as one utopian tool for expression, and other people think it's all bad and it's destroying our minds. The truth is that I really believe, at least I like to say the truth, but research shows that it's more like any other tool. It depends on the environment of who is using it, depends on how it's used, and depends on what it's being used for. So I like to tread the nuance of that.
Okay. Someone said social media is actually harming the mental health of our young people. What do you think of this?
Like I already said, I think it's less a question of good or bad. We need to move beyond the good or bad, and we need to really check on the when. When can it be considered harmful, and why, or to whom specifically? Because like I said, it depends on different things that might be more offline than online.
More offline than online.
Yeah.
Can you explain that, please?
For example, it depends on environment. The same hour scrolling on TikTok can lead different people, even if they're on the same room, to one can end up feeling inspired to do more with their life, and the other person could have spent the last hour comparing themselves to others, comparing themselves to what they see on social media, Instagram, for example. So yeah, I think these two can be influenced in the support they receive offline, the self-validation they might have in themselves. And, it's a whole thing. It's not just, that's why I say we should move beyond the good or bad and, find out at what point does it get harmful and to whom can it be deemed harmful. Those metrics are less causal, like I used to say, causal than the correlation that we usually use to justify these.
But we still have to talk about the importance, the advantages, the disadvantages of social media in our
society.
Yeah, society.
Yeah. Of course, for the harms, of course, there are specific harms, like I've already said. There's comparison, there's sleep deprivation, and also cyberbullying, of course. Science-based evidence, like the studies by Twenge or by Kellas, shows us that in 2010 that depression and suicidal rates were seen to rise. But like I said, it's always about nuance. It's compelling evidence, of course, because it's a study, but in most cases, it's really about correlation. And I usually say correlation doesn't equal causation. It's the harms are real, like I listed upwards: comparison, sleep deprivation, cyberbullying is a thing, of course, and but like I said, it's something really, as every tool, is something that has to be seen with nuance, and of course, we need to have boundaries. I can talk more on the harms if you want to, but
Go
there's
ahead.
also we also saw in a review in 2020 by Kellis and colleagues, in 19 studies, 16 of them found a clear link between social media and mental health issues like anxiety and depression. That's a real fact that exists. But as usual, the question is always about nuance. The truth is that these were self reports. In those studies, these were people who actually reported themselves to be going through depression in that moment.
Right, yeah.
So we can't really correlate it to the more general public because you can't really say it's a cause because it's still a correlation even in that space, even in that space where there's 16 out of 19 people that have been linked to something specific, we can't generalize it in that sense.
Oh, okay. Now, do you really think the young minds, the young people, are actually using social media the right way, the way they're supposed to use it, judging by what is going on in the community?
Once again, maybe you would want to specify what age you mean by young.
Young, like between 18 and 19, 20,
I
20,
believe
upwards.
I believe in this day and age, someone who's between anywhere from 16, to be very honest, doesn't really cater to right way to use something, and there's no user manual for social media. If we are being honest, the goods and the bads come out of the usage that everyone wants to use of
Yeah,
it.
like they just use it anyhow.
Exactly, and then that's why that question is. I can't really give a yes or no answer. Once again, it's always nuance because what is the supposed to, and then how do we define who is using it correctly and who is not using it correctly? That varies mostly on social norms. But the thing that is clear is that most people in that age range are very much responsible for whatever they decide to do with a tool. So I'm not sure we can really say, they should be using it this way or that way. But I think, yes, platforms should have regulations, and this has been put in place recently, of course, whether it's by EU law or by the recent cases that we had with Facebook and data management. So yes, of course, I think cyberbullying, of course, is highly regulated now. There are words that are directly flagged on social media during commenting or even messages. For example, even as a joke, you can't use some words that might be found insulting on TikTok, in anybody's TikTok comments. So of course, it's always a question of where are we measuring from, who are we measuring it with, and to what extent can we extrapolate to the more general public.
Okay. What do you think about social media scam being on the rampage within the youth?
I do believe that rampage might not be the correct word. I understand that there are, in that age range, it's less. Do you mean youth using it to do scam or being victims of scam?
Using it to.
I mean, it's an age long story. Every model of communication has brought its baggage of unethical usage, to not say illegal or bad, unethical usage. When it was telephone, we had telephone scam. When it was the first time of just internet WW, we had scams. And now with social media, it's the most prevalent way of communication nowadays. So of course, in every communication, there are unethical uses. There are people who try to take advantage of others in every space of the society. So it's unfortunate, but once again, I think it's a question of sensibilization on everybody's end to know the harms and to be prepared against it.
Well, okay. What about this? Can setting screen limits improve mental well-being of our young people? Like,
I wrote something on that. There was a study. I can't seem to find that specifically, but there was a study that was saying that there's no that in the real world, like I said, once again, studies are studies for basis, but in every point in time, we also have to have nuance. That 3 hours minimum of usage is actually better for some youths. So it's a yes and no ball game of sometimes it's better to use a bit than to be closed up in your own world because truthfully social media permits a lot of us to travel, see new places, see new travel posts, discover restaurants, discover foods, discover new styles. So yeah, I think screen limits are important in the sense of when, of course, the person is the offline life. I think that's where the focus should be. If your offline life is already being affected by social media in a verifiable manner, yes, it's important to have a screen limit to make sure that you have the space to connect with the other offline metrics that you've put in place to get you out of that space. If you're suffering from isolation, it's better to have screen limits that allow you to actually leave your house and go make, the connections that would solve that issue at the root.
wow, that's lovely. So you made mention of cyberbullying the other time.
Yes.
The question I have for you on that is how does cyberbullying impact the mental health?
I mean, bullying in general
Like on a broader view.
yeah, bullying in general is a huge thing because it's always it creeps up on you. You're in a space where you're supposed to feel welcomed. You're maybe looking for validation, and someone turns it all around, and it becomes subjugation, threats, and sometimes actual scamming out of money. So it's hateful messages, hateful content, mockery, excessive mockery. I think those ends, those extremes of the internet space, of the social media space, do cause a great deal of harm because, of course, if you were a bully in school, the goal was to step out of school, get back home, isolate yourself from your bully, and maybe tomorrow your bully does not come back to school. So at least something happens.
Yeah.
But most times you can't just up and delete your social media account. Your stalker is still there. You can't just up and close your YouTuber account just because a troll is continuously tagging and commenting hateful stuff to your videos. It's really something that can leave a standing impact in people's lives, and it's important to be aware of it. It's important to take note, and it's important to for those who are going through cyberbullying, know that there are different governmental situations and institutions that assist in that end. Anybody can. There are specific numbers. I do not have them offhand. For example, in the EU, in France, there are specific numbers that you can dial up to get assistance and
If you're
help on that.
cyberbullied.
If you're being cyberbullied, and sometimes something else that is rampant is revenge porn or blackmailing. Those two. There are associations that exist that can delete any pictures that might be incriminating to you from somebody's phone offhand without their consent. So these things exist, and I think it exists everywhere in the world. It's about being informed, using your information as you can, and making sure that you, I wouldn't say fight for yourself, but of course a bully must be fought in a sense. You need to get out of it by will and by
Like to defend
support.
yourself.
That's why I said defend might make the vulnerable person feel like they are not doing enough. So I wouldn't use defend in the sense because of course they've tried. The question, it's always
But
that.
I mean, you are being bullied when, for example, in school, when you are bullied. Like, I'm not even talking about social media now. When you are being bullied by probably the seniors in the school back then, I mean, you tend to want to fight back. The act of fighting back. I think it's a way of defending yourself. That's why I made use of that word.
Of course, but we all know that the percentage of people that fought back and it had any change is close to none. Most people change schools. I know I did change school.
You have been bullied.
For me, for example, I might look like this now, but back then, most people just end up changing
I mean,
school.
who can bully you now? I mean, you're a big guy.
Then, bullying is less about size and, more about someone's determination to make your life miserable. It's really a sad thing, but sometimes it's really just about the other person's motivation and determination that might be unjustifiable in your mind, but to them it makes sense. So that's why I say it's an encouragement in the sense of nobody should feel like maybe I've not defended myself enough. That's why I refrain from using such, because of course, you shouldn't even have to. People should just be decent, So when it happens, seek help, seek encouragement, and, find out ways to make life easier. Of course, you can't delete your account, but you can have the other accounts uninstalled. Have your friends report the person's account as many times as need be, and know that, social media is a space for everyone and you should enjoy yours.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And please, viewers at home, please like, subscribe, and comment down below your opinion on this. I will be so glad if you do. Thank you so much. God bless. And let's get back to it. Is it possible for young people to use social media in a healthy and a balanced way?
I would say, let's talk about the benefits in general. There is real research to show that social media can help. There is art, there's games, there are actual spaces of exchange that go on social media. Of course, you use social media. It's a way to see a friend's wedding from afar and still feel the presence of being there. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
So, the benefits are telltale to us. There's connection, there are universal expression and also feeling support. If somebody that you admire likes your video, or if it's in a professional space, for example, if a high-end YouTuber likes support the video on your podcast, you get the feeling of support. If 200 people are commenting on your videos and they're saying only good things, there is support. That's a universal benefit. That's a universal experience that we can all take and say, okay, this is an advantage. Otherwise, we would need more difficult and procedural means of having these conversations and these spaces and these connections in an instantaneous manner. Sorry, French always tries to creep up on me.
Yeah, I can understand.
So yeah, it's easy to overlook the positive side, but the actual studies, like the 2016 paper by Naslund, anyone can research, Naslund, that found that for people with mental health challenges, social media can be a huge leverage in battling isolation, for example. You know, if you're having a hard time stepping out of your zone, if you're having a hard time stepping out of your comfort zone, little by little, you can speak, you can be in groups where people are actually interested in getting to know you, and at one point, there's a different motivation to get out of that space and maybe make the extra step of having a real world connection. A 2017 study by Radovic also looked into teens using platforms like Tumblr and Reddit to openly speak about their mental health issues. It's a kind of relief that they can't get elsewhere. Not everybody has access to
Not
a
everybody.
psychologist. Not everybody has access to a therapist. So having a space where like-minded people, especially Reddit, where you have a space and different people give their different views, and depending on the number of likes, it pushed forward and all those things. There are visible benefits, but of course, it's like I said, everything's bad side gets focused on automatically. That's why we need to have these conversations to clear them out.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, there's also creativity. Posting art is a huge thing on social
Very
media.
huge. Yeah.
Before most of us make out time, and find the space to go to museums, art workshops, it takes a lot. And even if you do go to every social media, to every in-person art review, there are still 1,000 more people on social media that you've not discovered.
That's
1,000 more people that are genius creatives, but haven't had any table of them or any tableau of them in French. Sorry, I don't have it in English. Any tableau of them in any museum for the moment. So, of course, there's that part of social media too. The connection matters, even for gaming. Some people game together on lives when they can't, actually be in person because of distance, or the calls wouldn't be easier. You can game together. You can also learn about gaming now online because somebody is streaming directly on Twitch.
Even learn a lot.
So it's there are many things that can be said of the benefits. Even lately, Coins 2022 longitudinal study. Longitudinal, means they use the same process in a long period of time. Like I was saying earlier, 1 to 3 hours a day in moderate social use has been measured to not have any negative effects. So, sometimes our moms were like, you've been on your phone for 1 hour, your brain will get chewed up.
Yeah.
It's 1 to 3 hours is a lot of time to do a lot of stuff on social media.
Exactly.
And so it's not all bad. It's not all good. That's why we're here, to speak about the nuance. So again, it's not the time. It's not just social media itself. It's really about the how and the what. It's a whole thing that needs to be treated in tandem with day-to-day lives. I think the topic is very telling. It's important to actually take into view mental health in the topic. It's really what it is. Social media is still part of just the full environment of part of the things that can influence. It's a can. It can influence, and in some people, like I said, some people it doesn't change anything to their lives. And if your life is already bad or worse, we can only hope that social media helps you get better, if not otherwise.
And even there are some people, there's a saying, they used to say, not everything you see on social media is true, is
Yeah.
real, or is correct. Now, does it mean that most of the things out there on social media are not real, are not fake? I mean, are fake?
How do I say it? I used to jokingly call today's creators doing the la culture du fake in French, means the culture of the culture of the false life. Because of views, because of the shock elements, because of the what's the name? The buzz effect. Most things are curated, most things are implemented. I don't want to call it a skit, I don't want to call it a play, but they are curated to look and sound a specific way. It's media after all. There's media in the name after all. So before it just used to be, I took this picture, I like it, what do you think? I post it. Now it's, this picture, this type of pictures is trending and it's getting up to 15K likes. I need to go and take my picture in the same position with the same lighting, with the same Lightroom filter, and make sure that my followers like the same thing. And the issue is then, if your followers don't like the same thing, you're not comparing yourself to the person who originally did it. And you might not have the same demographic of people in your different accounts. You might not have the same algorithm routing. That's on the more technical side. You might not have the same algorithmic routing because you've not always been a photo or high level editing person. It's one post, and then you enter a spiral where you judge yourself or you put yourself down based on that. So is everything fake? No, but are most things made for profit and then, in that sense, made to look a certain type of way to fit a market? Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. I really think social media boils down to a lot of intentionality. If you're intentional about what you want to have on your feed, that's what you're going to have on your feed. If you unfollow the wrong account and you remember to always press not interested, for example, on Instagram, the algorithm is not going to keep showing the wrong things to you. I call it's choice.
Yeah.
If you keep saving the wrong post or liking the wrong post, you're going to keep seeing the wrong post. If you keep following the wrong account, you're going to keep seeing the wrong stuff. So people say sometimes, I need to cut off social media, and when they come back, it's the same thing. I'm like, okay.
All right. With that being said, how much of responsibility should social media companies, have for protecting younger users?
That's a very interesting question, and as an upcoming tech founder, I think it's important to note that business and ethics rarely meet at the same junction. I'd like to open with that. If it's making money, then it's most likely not fully hitting all the marks, morally, ethically. And there are ways to position yourself. Can more be done? Maybe. I would say yes, maybe yes. It's about, like I said, they've put in the whole cyberbullying sensors. There are people who are constantly monitoring what we watch. And that's also the fine line. How do we pair that responsibility with freedom and privacy? How do we pair that? So there's a fine line between protecting others and infringing on your own privacy to protect them. because if every time you post something or there's a high level of scrutiny and then there's a back and forth between your past posts, what kind of person are you, who should be following you or not, it removes the human in it, in the sense of it can also just be a mistake at point one. In that sense, it can also just be a mistake at point one. If you get flagged or you get shadow banned, so to say, because of one misconception or one error, it's sad. You lose access to a lot of things if it's what's making you money. And on the other hand, as a business, as a company, how far do they have the right to go? I'm glad that in places like the European Union, there are specific regulations on that, regulations on how far to go in monitoring, how far to go in privacy abrogation, how far can companies go to take responsibility? Because like I said, we use these things as freely as we use them because it has the freedom of being who you want to be. So the question is, how much do we want to protect or mitigate against the bad side? How much of the good side do we want to remove in that process? I think it's a question for another day. How much of the good side do we want to give away to make sure that we can curb as much as we can on the wrong end?
I think social media companies should really do more, because there was a time I wanted to purchase some set of goods online, and I contacted this guy, and he acted all nice and all that. But the next thing I discovered that after I made the order, of course I won't pay outrightly. I had to pay. I made half payment. And I didn't get to hear from that guy till tomorrow. I have not heard from him.
Okay, this is a very specific question, and here I'm going to give you a counter scenario. In the same vein, if someone has been harassing you online, it's the same button, it's the same block button that makes it possible for you to make sure that person can't contact you anymore. It's unfortunate, but that's exactly my point, is how far are we willing to go? Maybe businesses, yeah, of course, in that sense, maybe businesses should not be allowed to block people with impunity. Maybe once you show yourself as a seller on social media, there should be a certain level of regulation to
That
make
guy, if I catch that guy,
there should be a certain level of regulation to make sure that goods are delivered. Many platforms like Vinted or even PayPal ensure that happens. I personally don't buy anything on social media. I think there's also a general internet sensibility that we should all have. There's some things that shouldn't happen if it's not a secure link, if there's no middleman that assures payment and delivery on the two ends. I'm not buying. Internet vendors are not for me, but I'm not saying it's your fault. Like you said, yeah, they should do more. People should not just up and start selling products online without any regulation. It's appalling. But yeah, like I said, like we have said, they should do more. But all the same, more regulation, less people want to use it, and less there's business for the parties involved.
That leads me to this question. For example, if you are being defamed, or if you are being, I don't want to say bullied because we've spoken on that. If you are being defamed on social media, is there any way you can report such things?
Yeah, Instagram reporting has gotten a lot more extensible, a lot more perfected in that sense as of recent. But of course, it's always up to verification. It's always up to their side of it's always up to their end of the investigation at the end. Yes, you can report, like we already said. If even defamation online can be brought towards mancurant or pressing of charges, you can ask a lawyer to intervene and take a look at the issue. So, there are things that exist at the moment that help better the situation. It's not where it should be yet, we all agree. You can report anyone, whether there's actual evidence or not, they end up going to do their own investigation on their end. So yeah, these things exist, and it's very important that we are all aware and we take good use of the dispositions that we have at the moment before we get, more and better.
Better, okay. Can you really compare the period where there was no social media, nothing like internet and whatever, and now? How can you compare the two?
Unfortunately, I'm not of that generation, I would say. But I would say, I think it's about time and efficiency. It's the capacity to know that when you take the picture, you don't have to wait to go home to plug it into your computer and send it by mail, for example. You don't have to download before you send. You can directly copy images. Like, it's crazy how you can copy images. You don't even need to share or send through Bluetooth anymore. That's
yeah.
For example,
really makes life easy.
It's efficiency. Like I've always said, it's the capacity to do things that would take days before in seconds. So yeah.
Before we used to use what do you call it? Is it la poste or post? Something the French call la poste, whereby you write a letter when you want to send a letter to someone. You write it down, paper, put it in an envelope, go and send it. But now
you can send messages instantly as early as you need, and it's life is I won't say easier is a big word in this. If we are talking about nuance, we can't use nuance everywhere and forget to use it here. Easier is not the right word, but I would say it makes faster. It has made life faster. It has made things more efficient in the sense of people can actually discover your world if they choose to. You can sit on your phone and tell your whole life story as early as it happens to you. It has its good ends and it has its bad ends, but it really has had a huge impact on how we live life in its actual palpable sense.
Okay. Well, okay. And now, for example, I want to ask this question: how can the young people protect and safeguard their mental health with this social media age?
Okay. Once again, based on what we said earlier on the age of what we in this podcast are calling young, I think the question is right and not nuanced enough yet. I don't think it's about how I think it's more about how we as a society, what we teach each other and how we treat each other in real life. It transpires back to social media. If people learn to love themselves as they are, or to prioritize their own well-being, they won't have to find comparison online, for example. And if you love yourself enough, you would know that using your phone past 1 a.m. when you know you have to wake up at 6 o'clock is just not going to be good for your health. Most of these things are really not a social media issue. It's really about we as a whole,
As
if
the person
the
himself.
society and the person themselves. If someone who is in a home where they don't feel any love, appreciation, respect, understanding, of course they're going to look for external sources, and they're going to fall into the traps of people online. It's really just what it is. Social media is a reflection. I was waiting for us to get there. Social media is more of a reflection of ourselves, of our environment, the impact it has. It's really a reflection. It's really a reflection of what you are going through in your real life, what other people are going through in their life that they're showing online, and it's important to guide ourselves, to protect yourself. Like I said, once the decency, the decent parts, to exclude the extreme of cyberbullying and all that, once that is taken care of or treated, we can now look into the actual problem. Most of the time it's just loneliness and isolation. People have gotten too used to being able to send a message instantly that they don't send it anymore. It's the paradox.
Some people can't even do without their phones. On social media.
Yes, but that's that too. But I'm talking about the connection part. People are so used to the capacity of not needing to sit down and think about the letter that they need to send to their family members that they don't send any.
Even with the advent of this AI.
Exactly. So, there's the connection is lost. The human part of being human has been taken over by what is supposed to just aid and not replace. So yeah, I think to answer your question properly, I think we can talk about screen limits for those who have already been seen to have issues. For example, if you have issues with comparison or all that, it's important to know and make sure that you don't put yourself in spaces that flare up your situation. We need to teach digital literacy.
Yeah.
We need to teach people how to use social media mindfully, not in a right or wrong way, but mindfully. Mindfully. But the difference between mindfully is not about good or bad. It's I'm choosing this. I'm using it this way voluntarily. I know how. I know what. I know. It's having the full scope of the options, and not just falling into it. And
also knowing the consequences of it, of using what you choose.
Exactly, and for another thing I'll add is that platforms should be designed with having social media in mind. Less public metrics, having those things by default. Some things, some anti-bullying stuff, you have to set it yourself. For example, in comment section, you have to put what words are insulting or problematic to you by hand. Some platforms can make those things default so that you don't have to think about that. Parents should not feel like they need to be experts. They should not feel like they need to be technological geniuses before they ask questions. Sometimes it's less about their phones and how much they're not getting love at home. Let's face it, let's have those conversations. Let parents actually talk to their kids and find out what's going on. That has also been the moat of my whole conversation today. Is we can't ignore how people are actually struggling offline, because that's most of what it is. Social media amplifies that, of course, whether it's the good or the bad. But social media did not create the struggle. Social media did not create dysfunctional families. Social media did not create actual bullies offline. Social media did not create fake friendships. And we should think of investing into offline mental health care more. Because, like I said, if you're okay in your normal life, you won't be affected by social media that much.
Yeah. What's your take on this? Like, for example, the older generation and the younger generation, who uses social media even more better? Or
I would say the question is an easy give. The younger generation, of course, I've not seen enough daddies actually posting a picture that was cropped correctly. That's just me. The whole goal is not to define what's correct or what's not correct. That's why we have the freedom part. So, like, even what I just said, if a daddy posts his picture and the angle is all the way down here, it's his expression of social media. As long as he's consistent with it, he can enjoy it as he wants. If he wants to be texting on it or he wants to be posting pictures on Instagram, no matter how low quality or unconventionally uh, angled they are, I don't think it's a generational question. I think it's more of how much time is being used, who is losing out on the good parts in this essence. That's where I would actually push the question. Are the older generation, based on their non-willingness to actually get into it, based on being parent, of course, and having seen the bad parts up of, face to face, does it make them less reluctant to using it? Maybe. Is that the best way? I don't know. It's if all of them are off social media, then it might work, But if there's an old man who has, like I said, I consume a lot of educational content online. If it's an older man, gray, if you're hearing life advice from a man with gray hair, no matter how much going on in your life, it's easier to listen to someone who has experience. It's easier to, if you're looking for a niche, for example, if you are a tech guy or you are looking to get information on how to carpenter your table, for example, and you open YouTube, it would be, you have a clearer psychological preference to an older guy with a hammer and a low quality video than the guy that has the full setup, studio lights, and is sawing in his workshop. The machines might be better, but if your equipment lean closer to just a saw and some hammers, you would still prefer to go with the older guy because I think it's like most things today, we need to work hand in hand. Those who are older, who have more experience, who have more to share, should pick up social media managers from the younger generation and spread their message and make the money that can be made of it. And vice versa. If someone has a clearer way of going through depression, experience, having gone through PTSD for veterans and those who've been in actual war times, they can, find a better format to transfer that information downwards.
Wow, that's been wonderful so far. Really, really wonderful so far. Let me just ask this last one before we call it a day. In your own view, at what age do you think young people should be exposed to social media?
Personally, or my view?
Yes, on your own view. Your own view.
I would still say personally. Not everybody is the same. Not every platform is the same. And not all content is equal. So, for example, in some families where YouTube is the main social media, some people classify YouTube as social media when it's actually just a video platform. Some people classify Netflix into social media. If social media is Snapchat, TikTok is not really a social media, but it still gets blocked in there, So if social media is Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, without YouTube, I think it should be personally, if I did get to that point where I'd had to sit down with my wife and we had those choices, maybe I would talk about 15 minimum, maximum, no, minimum, yeah, from 15 years
15
old
years.
above, to make sure that the environment is solid enough, the family upbringing is solid enough, the values have been built, self-respect is a thing, self-affirmation has been completely built in the child before they get exposed to that. But there's also the flip side.
Okay.
If someone is being and has been entirely cut off of something and then they are introduced to it, there's always a space of adjustment and excess. So maybe in that conversation, we would have to be like, okay, maybe from 14 or maybe from 13, we start having conversations on what it actually is, why they don't have access to it at this point, why they are going to get access in the future. To make sure that it's not
They're well oriented.
exactly, to make sure that it's not okay, this has fallen into my hand now. What am I going to do with it? What can I do with it? It shouldn't just be a ban. It should be a learning curve. It should be we are getting there because this is not accessible now because you have to do this yet. There are many ways to, as a parent, to make use of social media and make it better for your kids. Gamified a lot of things. You can teach them how to maybe think about creating their own and or whatnot. Personally, yeah, I think 14, 15 is a good spot to start thinking about access, to limit access up to, let the child actually have a childhood, a real world childhood. It pushes you also as a parent to create meaningful connections for them earlier on. Because most parents just give their child a phone and continue doing something else outside.
Else, yeah.
So yeah, I would say 14, 15 personally, yeah.
Okay. Wow, thank you so much for coming. I mean, it has been insightful, educational, informative, and the likes.
Thank you too for having me.